Chosen ones, they tried to bury you because they couldn't understand you. They saw a seed and thought the soil would swallow it. They built castles out of sand. Loud judgments, quick labels, screenshots, and rumors stapled together into a fake portrait. They crowned their gossip king and convinced themselves the performance was the person. Here's what they forgot. Sand collapses the moment someone real touches it. Masks crack. Crowns fall. The louder the lie, the thinner the foundation. You are not what they published. You are what you quietly create. The internet loves a headline more than it loves the full story, but headlines don't hold up under scrutiny. Archives do. Receipts do. Raw history does. When you choose to bring your true record forward, the unedited messages, the context, the proof of what you actually did and why, you do more than clear your name. You reveal the stagecraft. You show that their power was always theatrical, reliant on momentum and not substance. And when the audience sees the stage pulled away, the panic in the room is not about truth. It's about losing authority. They fight with labels because they lack the courage to build. They weaponize screenshots because nuance terrifies them. Their applause is for the mask. Your life is the unmasked example that sows doubt in their certainty. When you place your authentic archive under the light, their story collapses into one that reads like rumor and envy, not reality. So how do you respond, chosen ones? With evidence and dignity. Let your unfiltered record speak. Let your work, your receipts, your timeline be the loudest thing in the room. You don't need spectacle. You need clarity. You don't need revenge. You need exposure. The moment you show the uncut truth, their authority evaporates. And that fear they feel is the sound of sand falling away. Before we go further, a small ask. If this lights something in you, hit like, share, and subscribe. Your support isn't just a number. It's the oxygen that helps this truth reach others who are buried under the same falsehoods. If this resonates, comment 77 to mark the frequency of new beginnings and public clarity. Consider it this way. Imagine a stage filled with actors reciting the same tired script. The audience claps at cue. You walk on stage, lay down your real script, the raw drafts, the emails, the work, and start speaking truth. The audience has two choices. Keep applauding the practice performance or listen. Most will freeze. Some will run. A few will follow. But the theater itself can never be the same again. They have been observing your life as if it were a television show. They believed they knew how the ending would unfold, laughed at certain scenes, and sobbed at others. However, you abruptly stopped the show at the peak. No credits, no farewell, just quiet, followed by mayhem. They rush to find the answers. While scrolling, their thumbs freeze. Their frail imaginations cry out for unattainable closure. Why? Because you reminded them that the script was never theirs. You did. What if they turn on me because of my past? The selected ones who are listening at the moment are thinking about that question. And I have a straightforward response. They are unable to. No more. Because you remove the bullets from their gun when you're the first to expose it, and when you possess it before they turn into a weapon. Shame only functions when it is silent. Only in the shadows can illusion flourish. The opponent, however, loses fangs the instant you take a position and declare, yes, that was me, and this is who I am now. They can't bite, but they can roar. They can't touch you, but they can pose. Don't make a mistake, selected ones. Your disclosure is not a sign of weakness. It's war. You have a receipt for every scar you bear, evidence that you have survived what might have devastated others. You don't merely survive when you show off those scars without feeling guilty. Because the opponent thrives on secrecy and the expectation that you will continue to hide, act, and shrink, you are in a position of dominance. The battleground is turned upside down the instant you bring everything into the open. They believe that you were pinned. You've cornered them with the truth instead. To be clear, those who yell the loudest when your history comes back to haunt you are not upset with you. They're upset with themselves. They can't take their eyes off the mirror that is your genuineness. They see the skeletons they've buried deep, the masks they wear every day, and the falsehoods they live behind. Their cowardice is exposed by your bravery. Their hypocrisy is exposed by your revelation. Right, men, to feel the peace of the angels and show your support with a super thank you up to $20. They polish their own chains and refer to them as flawless while making fun of your wounds. They now have to deal with the consequences of their own delusions because you were able to break away. But what if they realize the truth and leave me? Permit them. Chosen ones are aware of this. You were never among the individuals who merely like your mask. They had the outfit, the illusion, and the performance. Their devotion ends as the curtain comes down. It's not your loss, either. That is your freedom. Because those that stick around, those who see the true you and don't waver, aren't fans. They're allies. Furthermore, a single friend who upholds the truth is more valuable than 1,000 followers who are deluded. It's not a shock when your previous identity is revealed to my selected ones. It's a reckoning. The internet wasn't merely broken by you. Their brains were shattered by you. The flimsy buildings they had erected around you were destroyed by you. More significantly, you broke the bonds they attempted to bind you to. This is the strength of selection. That even your past, the exact thing they said would bring you to ruin, becomes proof of your fortitude, tenacity, and determination to give up. Let them speak, then. Allow people to conjecture, talk, and tweet. Because, in the end, every word they throw at you is like dust against the truth monument you have constructed. You destroyed the screenplay and changed the conclusion in real time. Yet they wanted you to be defined by their plot. And in doing so, you brought to the world's attention a reality that they detest. You are the only one who can determine who you are. That truth is like armor for those who are chosen. Because stories may fall apart, illusions could perish, and the internet could malfunction. The selected, however, cannot be shaken. They never won because of your disclosure. They had lost. And this is just the beginning of your inexorable and unrepentant ascension. And to everyone who has been selected to watch, it is not a coincidence that you are here. The evidence that you are not your typical self is this message. You stand out. Lock in with us if you're already feeling the effects of this energy. To demonstrate that you're prepared to accept the truth that dispels myths and shatters illusions, press the like button, hit subscribe, and leave a skull with a globe in the comments. Your contributions enable us to continue breaking the bonds, delivering you material that give you the strength to rise, and sustaining our movement. Hold on tight, for we're going to encounter the precise indications and insights that are only ever experienced by the selected. Let's begin. The first is the breakdown of brittle labels. Right, men, to feel the peace of the angels and show your support with a super thank you up to $20. They attempted to deceive you by saying that illusions fall apart when labels break. Your truth broke down the bars, even though they believed their words could imprison you. Allow me to address you directly, my lovely chosen ones. The adversary has attempted to use labels to define you for far too long. Failing, dropping out, making a mistake, becoming an outcast, or conversely, being a star, genius, or golden kid. As if their words had the ability to permanently alter your fate, they place those tags on you. Here's the reality, however. Labels are just labels applied on glass. When a reality strikes them, they peel, fade, and break. And your former identities reveal, one's simply shown the brittleness of such designations. Consider it. People are drawn to certainty because it gives them a sense of security. They like to think they can sum you up in a single word. It puts their chaotic world into tidy little boxes if they can claim that's who you are. It gives them comfort in knowing that nothing is beyond their control, that people are constant, and that life is predictable. What happens, however, if you destroy their script? When you emerge from the casket they buried you in and confront them as someone they never expected, what will happen? The illusion breaks out at that point. At that point, the labels they held in high regard disintegrate. But why should I care whether I'm labeled? Should I disregard it? That's what some of you may be wondering. Indeed, one choice is to ignore. But you weren't supposed to disregard the selected ones. You were supposed to break. Because you don't just become free when you break their labels. Everyone watching has their blindfolds torn off by you. The instant reality enters the picture, you demonstrate that the very words people use to form their opinions are weak, transient, and meaningless. I'll explain using a metaphor. Glass masks are similar to labels. People place them on you with the belief that they will permanently harden into your face. However, shards fly everywhere as you crack that glass and expose your true nature. It alters not just how they see you, but also how they see themselves. Because what about their label if yours may be so easily destroyed? Perhaps the identity people hold to is equally brittle if you, the person they believe they knew, can lose a complete skin and come out a different person. Nothing scares them more than that concept. This is the reason your previous disclosure went viral on the internet, my beloved chosen ones. Not because of the facts per se, but rather because of what they revealed. You did more than just disprove them. You showed them to be weak. You didn't only display a different aspect of yourself. The comfort blanket they had been holding on to was torn away by you. The false belief that classifications are everlasting, that verdicts are final, that the power of their words is unbreakable. Take a detailed look at how the internet works. It thrives on tags: influencer, outcast, saint, villain, and celebrity. People adhere to these identification identifiers because they make them feel comfortable, not because they are true. They believe that if I know who you are, then I know where I stand. However, you do more than just upend their perception of you the moment you shatter that delusion and remove the label. You interfere with their self-narrative. What if it's too much for them? What happens if I am attacked for it? Yes, some will be the selected ones. Some will snap. There will be rumors. Some will yell. However, realize that their response has nothing to do with your reality. It has to do with their fear. Write them in to feel the peace of the angels and show your support with a super thank you up to $20. You rock them to their core. You demonstrated to them that identification is not a crime. The draft is dynamic. They become unstable as a result of that knowledge, because their own lives, which they neatly confine to titles, reputations, or illusions, may also change if you can. And for those who thrive on regularity, the idea is intolerable. What do you do then? You continue to walk. You don't stop talking. You constantly demonstrating that labels go bad. Because when you do, selected ones, you reveal the frailty of human judgment itself in addition to dispelling the falsehoods that have been told about you. And their masks fall with their judgments when they break. All of a sudden, they find themselves facing their own reality. Furthermore, the majority of them are not prepared for such conflict. They panic because of this. They project because of this. They attempt to put you back in a box they put you in because of this. Here's what they don't comprehend, however. Glass cannot be put back together after it has been broken. It is impossible to return to the illusion once the reality has been exposed. Despite their shouts, whispers, and outbursts, the truth never changes. Their classifications are dead, their labels are meaningless, and their opinions are out of date. This is your fuel, chosen ones. Keep in mind that you are fire, and their boxes are cardboard whenever they attempt to confine you. You blaze through them. Your sheer being defies containment, not because you're attempting to prove something. You weren't made weaker by your last identity disclosure. It revealed them. It demonstrated to the world how flimsy their presumptions are, how fleeting their statements are, and how erroneous their faith in labels is. Put on that armor of truth, because all that is really shown when the internet yells, when adversaries point, and when voices attempt to tie you once again with antiquated language is their fear. I'm afraid of your development, frightened by their own vulnerability, afraid of an uncontrollable truth. The best part is that you don't have to yell back. The loudest response of all is your being unpackaged and unrepentant. You're not defined by labels. The moment you decide to develop, they vanish. My selected ones, keep in mind. That's why the internet was disrupted by your previous identities. It broke the sense of safety they had established, not because it astonished them. And now you stand higher than ever, while they are left shivering in the wreckage. Unflinching, unstoppable. Second, the masks they revered broke apart and turned to dust. The costume was never you, yet they bowed to it. Let's face a reality that the adversary cannot handle, my beloved chosen ones. The true you was never loved. The mask was adored by them. They were enamored with the performance, the well-developed persona onto whom they could project their illusions, prejudices, and desires. And the disguise cracked in their shaking hands as your former identity emerged and the whole narrative came to light. They panicked for that reason. They yelled for that reason. They realized they had been adoring a costume the whole time, not because of what you disclosed. Your truth is irrelevant to the internet. The show is important to it. It has no desire for reality. It longs for the edited teaser. Chosen ones, people are not hooked to you. They are dependent on the version of you that satisfies their needs, boosts their egos, and meets their expectations. This is where your reveal's beauty lies. However, it destroyed their sphere of comfort. It demonstrated to them that they had been neglecting the light and praising the shadows. Furthermore, no one wants to own that they were deceived by their own ignorance. But when a mask comes off, what if they turn on me? You could inquire. Indeed, some will. People's pride cannot bear the embarrassment when they discover they have been applauding for a false impression. They won't admit, I was wrong. Instead, they'll say, you betrayed me. They'll yell more, criticize more, and talk more because it's easier to project their shame onto you than to face the reality of their own situation. Recognize this, chosen ones. You are not the object of their wrath. Their embarrassment is the issue. Consider it this way. It was a mirror disguise. In reality, they weren't seeing you. They were witnessing a reflection of who they were. It made them feel superior if you failed. It gave them something to aspire to if you were a celebrity. It provided the villain with a moral advantage. However, their mirror also broke as the mask came off and their true identity was revealed. All of a sudden, people weren't just losing their opinion of you. The delusion they had created for themselves was fading. The earth trembled because of this. Their thoughts split as a result. This is the power of your unveiling, chosen ones. You did more than merely reveal the truth. You revealed their mask addiction. You demonstrated to the world how easily people fall for delusions. They cling so hard to performances, how willing they are to give up authenticity for consistency. They froze as the mask came off and they saw your wounds, history, and your humanity. Because reality is uncontrollable in contrast to illusion. Their scripts don't suit it. It does not conform to their stories. It is contradictory, complex, disorganized, and unstoppable. For what reason do people choose masks above the truth? Because masks are dependable. Masks remain the same. Masks don't resist. Masks provide a simple narrative that people may easily and painlessly swallow. Truth, however, is perilous. The truth disturbs. They are forced to delve further than they would want to by the truth. And the truth they had been avoiding was pushed upon them by you selected ones. For this reason, your revelation was more powerful than any rumor, louder than gossip, and more impactful than a scandal. Because your history wasn't the only thing at stake. Their pride was at issue. You tore away their investment in the persona they had envisioned you as. They believed they controlled the script, but you regained control. By doing this, you demonstrated that only you have the power to choose who you are, not the public, the internet, or the critics. This is the irony. They're the ones who betrayed themselves, even as they accuse you of doing so. Worshipping the mask rather than challenging the reality was a betrayal of their own wisdom. They invested in a falsehood, betraying their own dignity. They react angrily to your unavoidable truth, not because you let them down, but rather because they let themselves down. So, selected ones, let this inspire you. Every irate remark, denial, and projection is evidence that you've hit the mark. You didn't just reveal who you were. You took off their masks. You exposed the emptiness of their delusions, the brittleness of their adoration, and the hollowness of their judgments. And now they've seen the truth, whether they choose to accept it or not. Furthermore, truth cannot be hidden once it is revealed. They mistook you for the mask. They believed the delusion to be irreversible. But their whole universe fell apart the instant you showed them who you really were. That's what your previous identity reveals. The internet wasn't the only thing broken. Their pride was crushed. It broke their devotion. They were left gazing at something they would never be able to control again. The unadulterated, irresistible power of your genuineness. Third, the instant you changed, their comfort zone vanished. Their world collapsed when familiarity died. You didn't have their loyalty. To their vision of you, they were devoted. And as soon as you developed, you destroyed it. Let's rip the veil off this reality, my beloved chosen ones. You were never a part of the world. They were devoted to the version of you they believed, they understood, the old you. Like a bird in a cage, they were able to forecast, box, and confine it. They were comfortable with that version, no matter how defective or damaged it was. Comfort is also addicting. They found it simple to cling to your former identity. That one statement calmed their fears and let them look at you and say, this is who you are, because they may not have to face the parts of themselves that aren't defined if they could define you. It gave their chaotic life a sense of stability. It was never about you, your former self. It has to do with their craving for dominance. Here's where you shook them, however, selected ones. You destroyed their sense of familiarity the instant you ventured out of that skin, the moment you had the courage to change and show who you really were. And when individuals get unfamiliar, what happens? They get into a panic. They thrash about. They are furious because they were left gazing at a blank page and the tale they had imagined about you was abruptly dead. Let's be clear about this. Change is not hated by everyone. Unpredictable change is something they detest. When their falsehoods are exposed, they detest change. They applaud when progress is gradual and convenient, when it aligns with their schedule. They say, we're proud of you. We support you. However, that support transforms into opposition the moment your metamorphosis emerges from the shadows and your development becomes explosive. They no longer rejoice. They grieve for the solace you denied them, not for you. However, since my development has nothing to do with them, why does it harm them? The solution, selected ones, is straightforward in case you were wondering. Because they had to acknowledge that they had never met you before because of your progress. Furthermore, it is heartbreaking to acknowledge the reality. It indicates that every decision they made, definition they assigned, and viewpoint they maintained was based on sand. The easy version of you they relied on to feel safe was shattered when you showed them another part of yourself. Consider it this way. Their favorite storybook was your former self. They committed the characters to memory. They foresaw the conclusion. They believed the plan was theirs. Then all of a sudden you tore out the pages, revised the story, and gave it back to them. What emotions did they experience? Not amazement, not thrills, but fear. Because your growth eliminated their feeling of control in addition to altering the plot. Recognize this, chosen ones. Since evolution makes you unpredictable and unpredictability makes you deadly, the adversary never wanted you to develop. They wanted you to remain in the part they had assigned you. It may have been the outsider they made fun of, the failure they pied, or even the success story they concealed behind invisible ceilings. Because it encompassed you, your former self made others feel at ease. However, you went beyond their box. And when you did, you demonstrated to them that the foundation of their comfort was a falsehood. Lies also don't die easily. They fight back because of this. They criticize, talk, and attempt to make you return to your former self because of this. Not because you're incorrect, but rather because your development reveals their indolence, delusions, and resistance to change. Because predictable individuals don't pose a danger to the current quo, they wanted you to be predictable. But you were never meant to be predictable, chosen ones. You were destined to cause trouble. Therefore, don't take their fear for authority. Their fear is evidence. Evidence that you escaped their grasp. Evidence that their delusions were destroyed by your revelation. Evidence that you tore out what they thought was reality, the comfort zone. Your history has not angered them. Their version of you is dead, and they are grieving. Furthermore, you owe them nothing. Not their comfort, not their feeling of closure, nor their delusion of control. In actuality, the selected never exist to appease the delusions of the world. The purpose of a selected is to destroy them. The internet wasn't merely rocked by your previous identity revelation. The brittle feeling of familiarity that individuals had bound themselves to was broken. And now you stand more free than ever, uncovered, uncontained, and unstoppable, while they rush to reconstruct their illusions. You're not there to maintain order in their environment. You're here to demonstrate that their appearance of neatness was a lie. That's why the instant you developed, my chosen ones, their comfort vanished. They shivered in the wreckage of their own fictitious security as a result of your revelation. Fourth, they were compelled to look at their own skeletons by your reality. Their skeletons also shook as you exposed. They were afraid of their own scars, so they made fun of yours. The truth you told was not a confession. It was a mirror. I want to set the record straight, my beloved chosen ones. The confusion that resulted from your former identity exploding into the light wasn't truly about you. No, it had to do with them. Your scars weren't the only thing the internet saw. It saw a mirror of its own concealed injuries. They believed that the skeletons would remain imprisoned indefinitely. The air became thick because of this. Why people's brains broke open? Why did timelines tremble? It wasn't simply your tale coming to light during your revelation. They were frightened by what they saw as the mirror was thrust into their faces. Humans are quite good at hiding things they don't want to see. They use filters to conceal failures. They plaster prepared grins over sorrows. They call it success when they dress shamefully in pricey clothing. However, others who were selected, like you, refused to hide behind that oppressive mask. You broke their sense of control when you spoke your truth without apology. They know deep down that the truth they've been concealing will never remain quiet, which is why you made their facades falter. It's just waiting. Consider the speed with which the masses analyze the past of others. They make fun of other people's errors, point out their shortcomings, and spread rumors about their shortcomings. However, those that are selected are aware of this. That sound is only a smokescreen. They're making a last-ditch effort to avoid the limelight, because the meticulous act they have been putting on would fall apart in a matter of seconds if the light were turned in their direction. They are protected by their laughing. They are hiding their judgment. There is concealment in their critique. However, you broke through that disguise when you disclosed who you were before. You hauled their skeletons out of the closet in addition to revealing your own. Because of this, the internet shook rather than merely trended. Because all of a sudden, authenticity was no longer considered entertaining. It was conflict. But why are they so shaken by my revelation? Your bravery reveals the cowardice of the selected ones. You risked your life to bring your past into the present. You demonstrated that wounds do not kill, that the truth does not destroy, and that shame is rendered ineffective the instant it is spoken. The discovery doesn't just hurt. It shatters them as they are now compelled to question themselves. If you can unmask yourself and still stand tall, what excuse do we have for hiding? Your reality was a mirror, to use a metaphor. You were raw, unvarnished, and unrepentant as you stood there. And you weren't the only one in that mirror. They saw every aspect of themselves that they had attempted to hide. Their double lifestyles, their hypocrisy, and the falsehoods they speak to persuade others that they have everything all out. The fact that you survived indicates that they have been choosing to live in shackles, which is much more terrifying. Highlight reels, filtered images, sanitized narratives, and performances are all quite popular on the internet. On this stage, everyone covers the shadows, conceals the gaps, and edits away the mess. But you pulled down the curtains when you came out as someone you were before. You demonstrated that the mess never really goes away. It is nothing except weight. And they were completely shocked when you demonstrated that you could take responsibility for your mistake without feeling guilty. Since the question is now there in front of them, why are they still concealing if you can survive without a mask? Hear me, chosen ones. Your skeletons weren't the actual shock. The instantaneous realization of theirs was the true shock. Since the truth weighs more than rumors, the laughing faded. Since bravery speaks louder than falsehoods, the denial broke. Your revelation didn't make them feel suffocated. They felt as if their own dishonesty was choking them. They panicked for that reason. Their statements were abrasive because of this. The internet was unable to scroll by in quiet because of this. For them, your reality proved to be terrible. Cowardice is shown by authenticity. Next to your audacity, every mask and facade they put on fell apart, and the more profound fear that their own skeletons may eventually erupt with equal ferocity. Thus, selected ones, take note of this. Your history was never the only thing you revealed. Theirs was at issue. You didn't just reveal your tale. You dispelled a shared delusion. Their brains broke for that reason. The internet crashed as a result. Because that wasn't a confession, your truth. It was proof. Proof that the things they conceal are still alive, waiting and demanding to be seen. And now, selected ones, be aware of this as you go on. Their dread does not weigh on you. You possess the ability to survive. Your history no longer casts a shadow over you. You shine as evidence that every illusion is destroyed by truth when it is embraced. What others bury still exists, and you serve as a reminder of that. Additionally, by standing firmly in your convictions, you have made the world confront a mirror it was never prepared to witness. Fifth, you stop the parasites from consuming your tale. The parasites that were feeding on your tale were starved by you. They weren't applauding you. They were consuming you, and you shut off their supply with your truth. Listen carefully, my lovely chosen ones. They acted as if they cared for years. They pretended to be interested in your life, your ascent, and your challenges. However, this is the brutal reality. You never attracted the attention of most people. Only the version of you that suited their storyline was of interest to them. They weren't applauding you for being human. They were ingesting a self-enhancing picture, a fictitious persona that they had created in their own thoughts. And you tore away their feeding ground when you exposed your history and broke that illusion. They panicked for that reason. They struck out for that reason. Because when the host stops playing the part, parasites are at a loss for what to do. Consider it. Selected ones. This is how parasite perception works. They cling to a version of you in order to get something out of you rather than to comprehend you. It made them feel powerful if they called you weak. It made them feel entire if they perceived you as broken. They felt instantly justified and as like they were on a higher moral plane if they portrayed you as a villain. It was never about you in any of the versions of you they clung to. They needed to see the mirror in order to keep from confronting themselves. But if my tale doesn't help them, why do they care so much about it? You could inquire. Here's the solution. Because they relied on your image. It served as their means of escaping their own inadequacy, concealed wounds, and covert shortcomings. They evaded the task of facing their reality by consuming the shadow of you. They were distracted by you. Their projector screen was you. But you tore down the screen as your former self came out, unvarnished, unrepentant, and genuine. They were abruptly compelled to gaze at the empty wall of their own nothingness. What shattered them was that emptiness, that collapse, that quiet. Recognize this, chosen ones. You didn't lose folks when you spoke the truth. They no longer had your shadow. Their script no longer included the fictitious character. Their play unraveled. They had lost the meaning of their sentences. And they didn't have a replacement understudy. They responded with such anger and perplexity because of this. Because the character they fed on, the role they had given you, vanished in a flash. Your background wasn't the only thing you disclosed. Their parasitic perception was starved by you. They had been sucking false sustenance from your tale, but you stopped them. This is how I would phrase it. They were selected ones who were hooked to the solace your projected image provided. When the supply ran out, they experienced withdrawal symptoms, exactly like addicts do. You were never the focus of the rage, the rumors, or the outrageous charges. It was about their desperate attempt to hold on to the solace they had been soaking up from your tale. With your honesty, you didn't violate them. When you severed the connection, their own dependence shattered them. What if they continue to attempt to change my reality to suit their preconceived notions? You may also have that query, and the solution is simple. Give it a go. Because truth is beautiful because it is unyielding. They might shout with their projections. Their rumors may get out. However, the wall of reality you have already constructed bounces off every syllable. What you previously revealed cannot be changed. When the host quits pretending to be dead, the parasite is unable to feed. Additionally, your selected ones are still alive. You've never been more alive. The adversary detests this the most. You weren't lost. They were no longer in charge of the story. They are no longer able to utilize your picture as a mirror. They can't rise above you using your previous labels as a ladder. You tore the darkness apart with the light of truth, so they cannot eat it. And that's what caused the collapse. Parasite perceptions collapse. So, take delight in this moment. One thing is shown by every yell, every rumor, and every outburst they have. Their supper was taken away by you. They were no longer allowed to feed on your narrative. And you didn't just release yourself by doing that. You revealed their reliance on a falsehood. You weren't lost. The ghost of you that fueled them was gone. Keep it in mind, selected ones. Your previous identity revelation was thus like an earthquake. Your truth wasn't the only thing that came through. Their delusions were dying of starvation. You stand higher, stronger, and freer than ever while they frantically search for a new narrative to read. Evidence that parasites only flourish when you let them to. Additionally, that authorization has been permanently withdrawn. Sixth, your scars served as proof. They were unable to remove. The past remained alive. Their falsehoods were burnt by the receipts. You transformed your scars into proof that disproves their belief that they were weapons to harm you. Let's be clear, my beloved chosen ones. You weren't buried by the past. You were built by it. The adversary wanted you to conceal, cover with dirt, and act as if your past never happened. They wanted you to treat it like a cemetery. In order to rewrite chapters for you, they needed you to cringe at your own wounds, writhe at your own errors, and delete chapters. However, you took the opposite action. You weaponized your history by bringing it into the open, unvarnished, and unavoidable. And when your identify was made public on the internet, those selected ones' brains were broken. Because this is the reality. Once shame is yours, it can't help you. Silence simply breeds shame. The adversary loses leverage when you stand up and declare, yes, this is where I've been, and it's exactly why I stand stronger now. That flourishes when individuals can whisper, if anyone knew this about you, it would destroy you. The blade is no longer with them. You do, and you slice through their delusions rather than destroying you. Consider your history as receipts. Most individuals destroy theirs out of fear that they will be used as evidence against them. But all of them are preserved by you, the selected ones. They weren't erased by you. They were born by you. When you drop those receipts in public, the adversary couldn't dispute because receipts don't argue. Every failure, fall, and scar is a receipt that says, I've paid the price. I've endured the pain. I've earned this strength. Receipts don't ask for approval. They just are harsh, cold, and unquestionable. But what if others see me as weak because of my past? This may be a question some of you have. Hear me out. Pretending that you have never been broken is weakness. What frightens them is authority standing shamelessly amid the wreckage and declaring, yes, I've been broken, but I refuse to stay shattered. You used your scars as a microphone, even though they intended for them to silence you. You turned every injury into proof that their assessment was never accurate. It was only practical. When you were revealed, everyone sought to ignore you. They intended to say, see, this proves you're unworthy. However, the same history they attempted to use as shackles ended up serving as evidence that you had survived a fire and emerged stronger than before. Each effort to exclude you served as more proof of your persistence. It broke them because of this, because your past certified you rather than disqualifying you. Let's consider the bigger picture. They anticipated silence when they saw your wounds. They received testimony instead. They believed you would conceal your proof. Rather, you displayed it as if it were an unquestionable archive. For them, it is the reason it is so heartbreaking. Because once the past is made public, it never really goes away. It doesn't forget. It will always be there as live evidence, a monument they cannot destroy, and an unchangeable reality. For them, this is the painful irony. Selected ones, the exact errors they made, the very things they scoffed at, the very failings they believed would bring you to ruin. You now ascend higher than they ever can for those reasons. You compel them to face their evidence because you won't hide yours. With one ruthless fact, your wounds reverberate back to them. The receipts I keep endure forever, but the falsehoods you lied about me are dead. They were quite uneasy about that. Not only did your history come back to haunt them, but you did it with such unreserved abandon that it ruined their plots. They lost command of your story. They were no longer able to use partial facts to define you. And by losing that, they had to confront the harsh truth that all of the weapons they believed they had against you had already been rendered ineffective. So, keep this in mind, selected ones. Your history does not define you. It's a courtroom. Each scar you disclose serves as proof against the falsehoods that were spread about you. Your perseverance is shown by each setback you overcame. And this is the ultimate decision. You triumph because you were the first to own your past, not because you concealed it. There is no argument in evidence. It just remains. Take a moment to process it. Selected ones. Evidence is immovable, indisputable, and enduring. And when your former self was revealed, it was stronger than all the lies, rumors, and presumptions. It broke the internet because of this. It broke brains for that reason. Because the precise evidence that now dispels their delusions was the receipts they believed would bury you. You debunked the notion of smooth, linear development at number 7. The straight line climb myth was destroyed by you. They wanted your tail to ascend like an elevator, but you showed them that it was always fire and debris that led to rebirth by tearing off the wires. Listen carefully, my lovely chosen ones. The idea of linear progress is one of the most powerful delusions that people love to worship. They want to think of life as a tidy staircase. First, second, and third steps. Everything is neat, well-aligned, and predictable. They want to shake their heads when you fall, applaud when you get up, and tell your experience as if they were summarizing it. However, you dispelled that notion when your former self came to the fore. You revealed the reality they had been evading. That growth is never straightforward, neat, or under control. Growth is uneven. The process of growth is untidy. Growth is resilience clothed in turmoil. This is why your revelation rocked the chosen ones to their very core. Because they believed your identity to be permanent until they witnessed you change it. The sanitized success arc they loved to praise online was nothing like your route, they realized. They wanted you to conceive of your life as a continuous ascent up a ladder, a few setbacks, a lesson learned, and then a round of applause. But that dream was torn apart by your reality. You demonstrated to them the steady ladder is not indicative of true change. It seems as if you've fallen through the floor, broken into bits, and then rebuilt into something nobody anticipated. However, if I simply provide the polished version of progress, won't people appreciate me more? Is it the deception society spreads to keep you in your box? The refined version isn't really respected by them. Because it makes them comfortable, they put up with it. Your unadulterated growth is what they dread, selected ones, since it disproves their justifications. You demonstrate that setbacks are not ground for disqualification when you disclose that your path was filled with upheaval, collapse, rebirth, and scars. Fuel is what they are, and as soon as you demonstrate it, their meticulously constructed delusions of advancement start to fall apart. Consider how awkward your revelation was for them. They must confront their own shortcomings in a new way if they acknowledge that your wounds and fractures served as the basis for your success. It implies that their diversions, concealed errors, and buried regrets are all a necessary part of the journey rather than embarrassing dead ends. They are frightened by it, because your mere presence tells them differently, and if that's the case, they can no longer use the excuse, "I failed, so I'm done." Because it keeps people docile, the adversary feeds off the notion of linearity. They believe that growth is predictable as a result, a line that only rises when they behave. But you broke that deception you selected once. That reality is too harsh for most people. Your previous identity revelation cried out, "No, growth is not a line. It's an explosion. It's destruction. It's the death of who you were so you can be reborn into who you were meant to be." Since the neat narrative line doesn't require them to be honest about their inner instability, they prefer its protection. However, they're unable to ignore it once they see you standing tall in yours. So why are they so irritated by my untidy growth? Because your truth compels my chosen ones to face the fact that their own failures do not justify their ascent. You took away their comfort. Because you converted your failures into lessons and resilience, people can no longer use them as evidence that they should give up. You did not ascend a straight flight of stairs. You destroyed it and used the ashes to create something bigger. They shudder at that realization because it indicates they have run out of reasons. Your history broke the internet because of this. Not only was it unexpected, but it also destroyed the hope of consistent advancement they had held onto throughout their lives. It was their goal for your tale to nicely fit into their framework. However, you proved to them that it doesn't. You tore away their safety net of predictability and put the unvarnished reality in its stead. There is no ladder to growth. It's a battleground. Those who have been chosen gladly wear this discovery. Your strength is shown by every scar, every breakdown, and every instance in which you continued to go on even after you believed it was finished. Because of your courteous ascent, you are not here. You returned unrecognizable after surviving the fire, which is why you are here. And since it reveals how flimsy their illusions are, the world despises it. There is no direct route to growth. There is a storm, and only those who are selected are taught how to dance in it. My selected ones keep it in mind. Therefore, revealing your prior identity didn't merely throw off the plot. It broke it, and where their staircase had been, there were just ruins. And you go on more powerful, independent, and unstoppable while others lament their dashed hopes. You destroyed the conclusion they had previously written for you. Number 8. The ending they vowed was yours was rewritten by you. Before you passed away, they etched your obituary, but you tore the pen away from them and burned the paper. Hear this clearly, my lovely chosen ones. The world always feels entitled to wrap up your tale for you, as if their thoughts were the ink that sealed your destiny. They sit in the cheap seats of life and write their own conclusions about your voyage. You were already done in their eyes. You would remain the failure who never climbed, according to some. You were confined by others as the outsider who would never fit in. They wrote your obituary early, stamped it as fact, and continued with the haughtiness of those who thought they had the power to determine your fate, but chosen ones when your former identity became apparent. Even those who cheered you set ceilings over your head, whispering, "This is as far as they'll ever go." Everything fell apart. They weren't just shaken. They were embarrassed, because you did more than just repeat what they had already imagined. In the middle of a sentence, you ripped it out. You broke their story with something they didn't expect. You tore their flimsy script to shreds and had them confront the one thing they detest most about life. They didn't even know you. But why is it so painful for them? Some of you may wonder. The solution is straightforward. Closure is what the internet lives on. People expect tales to have neat ends, people to have fixed roles, and reality to be predictable. It gives them a sense of security. They feel as if they comprehend the universe because of it. They were thus deeply shaken when you tore the conclusion from them and disclosed that your narrative is still alive, still developing, and totally out of their control. They weren't only taken aback. They were in the open, exposed as onlookers who believed their predictions to be fate. Consider it this way. They believed they knew the ending of the movie they were watching. They whispered in the dark, "This is how it ends." And then suddenly, you got up from the screen, walked into the theater, and burned the reel in front of their eyes. No warning, no permission, no closure. Just a brutal reminder that this wasn't their film to direct. It was yours all along. My chosen ones understand the power of this moment. People hate being robbed of their false authority. They had celebrated your downfall before it happened. They had laughed at ceilings they swore you could never break. They had mourned an ending they thought was sealed. But your reveal shattered that smug certainty. It proved that no matter how many headlines they write, how many whispers they circulate, how many judgments they pass, your life is not their manuscript. It is a living draft, constantly rewritten by your own hand. But what if they're angry? What if they turn bitter now that I broke their script? Let them. Their anger is the sound of their illusions collapsing. Their bitterness is proof that you outgrew the box they tried to bury you in. Do not fear their humiliation. It is the natural consequence of their arrogance. They should never have believed they owned your ending in the first place. Chosen ones, this is why your past identity reveal shook them so violently. It wasn't about the details of your past. It was about the audacity of your evolution. You dared to live beyond the obituary they had already written. You dared to rise when they swore you were finished. You dare to remind them that no one, not the critics, not the fans, not the masses, gets to declare your story complete. They thought they had closure, but closure was a lie. You denied them the luxury of finality and forced them to face the endless, unpredictable truth of your existence. And that truth cuts deeper than any rumor, any headline, any label ever could. So hold your head high, chosen ones, because while they're left holding a broken obituary, staring at ashes of a script they once worshiped, you are already writing the next chapter they swore would never exist. And every sentence you write, every page you turn, every chapter you unveil is living proof that your story is unstoppable. They thought they knew your ending, but chosen ones, endings belong only to the author, and you hold the pen. Number 9, the real price of raw authenticity hit them in the face. The heavy price of raw authenticity. They begged for the truth until it arrived unpolished. Then it burned their illusions to ash. My dear chosen ones, let me remind you of this. Authenticity isn't free. It's not the shiny word people throw around in motivational speeches or the neatly packaged realness they applaud when it doesn't challenge them. No, authenticity is a storm. And storms don't arrive politely. They rip roofs off, they flood the streets, and they leave nothing untouched. When your past identity reveal broke the internet, it wasn't just information. It was disruptive honesty. The kind of honesty that strips away every mask people cling to and forces them to face a mirror they weren't ready for. The world loves to chant about being real, but what they really mean is being real on their terms. Safe. Real, pretty real, digestible real. They cheer when someone shows vulnerability in a way that entertains them, when it's wrapped in an inspirational bow softened and sanitized. But chosen ones, the moment you dropped the raw, unapologetic truth, admiration flipped into panic. Why? Because your truth demanded something of them. It cost them their assumptions, their comfort, and most of all, their control. Here's the double standard and you've lived it. People don't actually want authenticity. They want the illusion of it because illusions are predictable. Illusions make them feel safe. But the second you shatter that stage, when you stop curating and stop feeding them what they want to see, suddenly you're not inspiring anymore. You're dangerous. Dangerous because you show them what they've been hiding from themselves. But what if my truth makes them uncomfortable? You might ask, my chosen ones. That's the whole point. Truth is supposed to make people uncomfortable. If it doesn't shake something inside them, it isn't truth. It's performance. When you revealed your past identity, you weren't just telling your story. You were dismantling theirs. Every illusion they had about who you were, every projection they had built, every version of you they were comfortable with, it collapsed. And in that collapse, they saw themselves exposed to. Think about it this way. Authenticity is expensive because it's a mirror people didn't order. When you walked out with your scars visible, your history undeniable, and your evolution unstoppable, you handed them a bill they weren't ready to pay. That bill was the cost of facing their hypocrisy. They say they want real, but only if it's flattering, only if it entertains, only if it confirms their bias. You didn't give them that. You gave them reality, raw, messy, layered, uncontrollable. And the moment reality hit, they panicked because they couldn't script it, couldn't edit it, couldn't own it. But why did they react with anger, gossip, and denial? Because chaos is the only response when control is ripped away. They couldn't hide behind their projections anymore. They couldn't keep clapping for a mask while ignoring the human beneath it. And the worst part for them, you did it unapologetically. No permission asked, no edges softened, no performance for their comfort. That kind of authenticity is a declaration of war on illusions. And illusions always fight back before they die. My chosen ones, listen carefully. Authenticity will cost you. It may cost you admiration, followers, comfort zones, and fake supporters who only ever love the mask. But what you gain is priceless. You gain liberation. You gain the power of standing unfiltered in front of the world with nothing to hide and nothing left to weaponize against you. And more than that, you gain the clarity of seeing who can stand with you when the mask is gone. Your past identity reveal under this title that shakes the digital world didn't just break the internet. It shattered the lies people had wrapped around themselves. Because if you could own your chaos and still rise, What excuse do they have for hiding behind carefully curated illusions? Your authenticity didn't just speak to them. It exposed them, and that is why they trembled. Remember this, chosen ones. Authenticity isn't applause friendly. It's battlefield ready. When you show them your unpolished truth, you force them to pay the cost of what they claim to value but never practiced. You prove that authenticity is not comfortable. It is disruptive. It doesn't soothe illusions. It destroys them. And most people were never ready for the bill. But you chosen ones, you were born to deliver it. And so, chosen ones, after all is said and done, one truth remains clear. Your past identity reveal just broke the internet and shattered their minds. The illusions they built are gone. The labels they clung to are dust. And what's left standing is you. Unshaken, unstoppable, undeniable. If this hit you the way it was meant to, show your power. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop 77 in the comments if you're ready to own your truth. Share this with someone who needs it, and let's keep breaking illusions.